Under the cold, white LED lights of a sprawling Silicon Valley mansion, Marcus Wellington, 35, CEO of Neurotech, a multi-billion-dollar tech empire, sat in his third-floor office, scrolling through quarterly revenue data. He had it all: money, power, and a home anyone would envy. But what he didn't have was trust in people. To Marcus, every glance hid an agenda. Every smile was just a mask. Today, the thing distracting him wasn't an email from investors or a news report about a competitor. It was something trivial, something from the kitchen downstairs. His smart fridge, equipped with advanced sensors, had just sent a notification to his phone. Haagen-Dazs chocolate flavor decreased by 200 grams. Consumption does not match owner's history. Marcus frowned. He hadn't eaten ice cream since he was 18, after his doctor warned him about his blood sugar. So who touched it? He pulled up the security system and rewound the morning footage. On the screen appeared Sophia Miller, the new housekeeper. 29 years old, white blonde hair tied up high. Wearing worn-out sneakers, she opened the fridge. She looked around clearly to make sure no one was watching, then took out the Haagen-Dazs tub, scooped a small spoonful, and ate it with a look of pure satisfaction, like she'd discovered treasure. Stranger still, as she cleaned the mirror in the dining room, she paused, smiled at an empty wall, and whispered something. Marcus zoomed in. Her smile was radiant, but there was something mysterious about it, like she was sharing a secret with the house itself. "Spy," Marcus muttered, half joking, half serious. He immediately called David, his loyal assistant since college. "David, run a background check on Miss Miller. If she turns out to be a corporate spy, I wouldn't be surprised. Who smiles at walls anyway?" David chuckled on the other end. "Sir, she's just the maid. Clean record, 29 years old, grew up in Oregon, worked at a hotel in Oakland. She applied through a reputable agency." "Reputable doesn't mean trustworthy," Marcus cut in. "She asked to leave early almost every day. Says she has something at a daycare center." "A daycare? Sounds like a cover. Dig deeper." David sighed. "Yes, sir. But are you sure this isn't just about her eating your ice cream?" Marcus hung up without answering. He went downstairs, opened the fridge, and stared at the half-eaten tub. The faint scent of chocolate made him pause. The last time he smelled, that was when his mother was still alive, baking cakes on his birthday. He slammed the fridge shut, telling himself to keep his distance from this strange woman. Meanwhile, Sophia was wiping down the dining table with a microfiber cloth, her movements swift and precise. She wore a simple blue t-shirt, but her old sneakers, their soles nearly worn through, made her look like someone who had just finished a marathon. When Marcus walked in, she looked up and flashed a bright smile. "Good evening, Mr. Wellington. I just finished the dining room. Anything else you'd like me to do before I leave?" He looked at her, searching for any sign of deception, but her eyes were clear, no flinching, no hesitation. "No, you can go," he replied, his voice colder than intended. "Off to the daycare again, right?" "Yes," Sophia nodded, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a habit Marcus had noticed from day one. "The kids are waiting. Thank you for letting me leave early." She picked up her old canvas tote and left with light steps. Marcus stood there watching her through the glass door. He didn't understand why he noticed such small things: the way she tucked her hair when she was nervous, the reusable water bottle she always carried, or the way she hummed a strange melody when she thought no one could hear. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He opened the security footage again and replayed the moment Sophia ate the ice cream. This time, he didn't just watch the action, he focused on her expression. She scooped the ice cream, closed her eyes, and softly sang a folk tune, her voice as light as the wind. In that memory, Marcus, standing just beyond the camera's view, felt the corners of his mouth lift into a rare smile. But he quickly reminded himself, "Don't be fooled. No one is as good as they seem." He turned off the screen, but Sophia's smile lingered in his mind. For the first time in years, Marcus felt curious about another person, not out of suspicion, but because she didn't seem afraid of his cold gaze. And that, for Marcus Wellington, was a mystery greater than a stolen scoop of ice cream. You're watching Soul Stories, where every story whispers of love, healing, and hope. Let us know which city you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and be a part of our journey. Now stay with us. The story is just beginning. On Wednesday morning, Marcus Wellington woke up with a plan that even he had to admit was ridiculous. Follow Sophia Miller to decode her mystery. That enigmatic smile, the soft singing in the kitchen, and the repeated excuse of a daycare had looped in his mind like a riddle, stealing his sleep. "She's definitely hiding something," Marcus muttered as he threw on a gray coat, pulled a baseball cap low over his forehead, and put on sunglasses trying to imagine himself as Agent 007. But one look in the mirror revealed not a suave spy, but a CEO who looked like he was about to rob a bank. He climbed into his Tesla Model S, turned on autopilot, and entered the destination, the bus stop where Sophia usually appeared after work. In a moment of impulsiveness, Marcus forgot to disable the GPS tracker that synced with David's phone. Just 10 minutes later, as he was parked 2 blocks from the stop, adjusting his sunglasses in a failed attempt to look inconspicuous, his phone buzzed. A text from David. "Boss, are you tailing someone? Should I increase your insurance coverage? Or just call the FBI now?" Marcus nearly choked on his coffee, his face turning red as a traffic light. He texted back with trembling fingers. "Shut up, David. Get back to work." From a distance, he saw Sophia step off the bus, her blonde ponytail swaying like a shampoo commercial. She wore a pale blue hoodie, those same war-torn sneakers that looked like they'd survived World War II, and carried a bulging canvas tote. Marcus squinted, mumbling, "Books? Toys? Or a timed explosive?" He chuckled at his own absurdity, but still started the car, trailing her like he was in an action movie, though in reality, he was just a clumsy guy in a Tesla with crooked sunglasses. Sophia walked several blocks and stopped in front of a worn-down building with a faded sign. Esperanza Orphanage. Marcus parked across the street, rolled down the window and muttered, "You're a CEO, not a private investigator. What are you even doing here?" Before he could answer himself, he saw a tiny girl sprint out the front door and leap into Sophia's arms. Sophia knelt down and pulled a slightly worn teddy bear from her tote, making the child squeal. "Miss Sophia's bear is the prettiest ever." Marcus blinked in surprise. "Okay, not a bomb." Not ready to give up, he sneaked into the orphanage's backyard, hiding behind a cement post tangled with vines. His coat snagged on a branch, and his sunglasses clattered loudly to the ground. "Fantastic," he groaned, wondering if there had ever been a more humiliating day. Inside a small classroom, Sophia stood in front of a group of kids ranging from 5 to 12, who were listening with rapt attention. She held up a flashcard with a picture of a burger and asked, "All right, Tommy, if you don't want pickles, what do you say?" Tommy, around 8, scrunched up his face. "No, pickles?" Sophia pretended to be stern, hands on her hips like a theater actress. "Say it like the whole world depends on it not having pickles, because it does." The class burst into laughter, and Tommy shouted, "No pickles!" Sophia clapped and gave him a star-shaped sticker. Marcus, watching from behind the post, snorted with laughter and almost dropped his phone. "She trains them like little soldiers," he muttered, but the smile vanished as a sharp twig jabbed him in the back. Sophia switched to story time, her voice warm as she led the kids into a world of dragons and knights. Marcus realized she wasn't just teaching English. She was giving the children a home, a place to laugh. His gaze shifted to her canvas tote, forgotten on a chair near the door. Curiosity won over logic. He crept forward and gently touched the bag, whispering, "If this has secret files, I'll resign as CEO." Inside were old, worn-out children's books, covers bent from being passed through 100 little hands. Marcus imagined Sophia under a dim lamp, reading aloud to the kids, and felt something warm in his chest like sipping hot cocoa. The dismissal bell jolted him back to reality. He rushed back to his car, nearly tripping over a trash can, muttering, "You're 35, Marcus, not a teenage spy." He sat in the car but didn't start it. His mind replayed the scene. Sophia patiently guiding Tommy, her joy as the little girl hugged the teddy bear, her quiet devotion with no need for applause. Why does she do it? No money, no fame, no audience. He wondered aloud, his hands tightening around the steering wheel. On the drive home, Marcus didn't turn on the radio. His thoughts were tangled beyond repair. Sophia wasn't a spy or a con artist like he had imagined. She was someone who lived for others, something Marcus, with his $1 million home and 8-figure bank account, had never imagined himself doing. His initial suspicion had shifted into admiration, now wrapped in a question that made him want to bang his head against the steering wheel. A boss stalking his maid. What the hell is wrong with you, Marcus? That night, lying on his king-size bed, Marcus stared at the ceiling as Sophia's image floated in his mind. He told himself to keep his distance, but all he could see was her handing that star sticker to Tommy and that radiant, sincere smile. Damn it, he muttered, tossing and turning. Marcus Wellington never imagined he'd be the kind of man who sat in a $1 million office, trying to make an anonymous donation to save an orphanage. But ever since his clumsy stakeout at Esperanza, the image of Sophia Miller with her blonde ponytail, radiant smile and handwritten notes tucked inside tattered books had driven him to act in ways he didn't even understand. "You've lost your mind, Marcus," he muttered, typing in the final keystrokes to transfer $50,000 through an anonymous charity fund with a single note, "For Esperanza Orphanage, don't ask who sent it." That day, Marcus deliberately drove past the orphanage around dismissal time, parking far enough away to remain unnoticed. He wore a cap, sunglasses, and pretended to scroll through his phone, though his eyes were fixed on the front door. When Sophia stepped outside, hugging a little girl and whispering something that made them both burst into laughter, his heart slammed against his ribs. Then a staff member ran out, shouting, "Sophia, someone donated $50,000. We're not shutting down anymore." Sophia froze, her hand flying to her mouth, and then she burst into tears. The sunlight caught the glistening drops on her cheeks, and Marcus, from across the street, felt his chest tighten as if someone had squeezed the air from his lungs. Damn it, she's crying. And still that beautiful? He quickly looked down and pretended to check his emails, anything to hide the ridiculous smile spreading across his face. From that day on, Marcus started finding ways to accidentally bump into Sophia at the mansion. Once he wandered into the kitchen while she was wiping down the counter and blurted, "Oh, you're here? I was just looking for coffee." Sophia looked up with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. "In the bathroom, sir?" She pointed to the sink she was cleaning, leaving Marcus speechless. He mumbled something about checking the water pressure and beat a hasty retreat, his face redder than a stop sign. "Some CEO," he muttered to himself. "You're a walking disaster." Still, he couldn't stop his lips from curling into a smile. Those brief encounters started to shift the mood in the house. Sophia began teasing him with light jokes, and though Marcus kept his icy exterior, he secretly loved how unafraid she was of his sharp, cold gaze. He realized he looked forward to their accidents, even if they left him flustered like an awkward teenager. One morning, Marcus left a hot cup of coffee on the kitchen counter next to a small, scribbled note, "For the best mirror cleaner." Then he hid behind the door, heart pounding like he'd just finished a marathon, waiting for Sophia's reaction. She walked in, saw the cup, and read the note. A slow smile spread across her face, warm and bright like sunrise. "The boss has a sense of humor," she whispered to herself. She tucked the note into her shirt pocket, took a sip of the coffee, and closed her eyes in contentment. From behind the door, Marcus felt something swell in his chest. "She kept the note," he told himself, then quickly scolded. "You're 35, not 15. Pull yourself together." Meanwhile, Sophia started noticing Marcus's odd behavior. She thought he was just being kind of wealthy boss trying to do good, like donating to the orphanage. But sometimes she caught the way he looked at her, not the cold stare of a CEO, but the eyes of someone trying to hide something. "Don't get carried away, Sophia," she warned herself. "He's a billionaire. You're just the girl who cleans mirrors." And yet her smile always seemed brighter when he was around. Marcus's coincidences became more frequent. He'd pretend to inspect the living room lights while she cleaned, or ask ridiculous questions like, "Do you think the wood floors are too shiny?" Sophia replied with playful sarcasm, and gradually the two grew more at ease, though still bound by an unspoken distance. Marcus knew he wanted to be closer to her, but every time he tried to speak his mind, the confident vocabulary of a CEO turned into a pile of useless paper scraps. That night, back in his office, Marcus opened an email confirming that his donation had been used to repair the orphanage's roof and buy new books. He imagined Sophia reading those books to the kids and couldn't help but smile. But the smile faded when he whispered, "What are you doing, Marcus? Playing guardian angel to a housemaid?" He shut down his computer, but the image of Sophia's smile and the note she tucked into her pocket haunted him. For the first time in his life, Marcus Wellington felt like his heart no longer belonged to him. And the culprit, ironically, was a mirror cleaning girl whose smile outshined every LED light in his office. Rain fell steadily against the villa's windows, tracing shimmering lines under the soft amber lights. Marcus stood by the living room window, staring into the dark, his mind still filled with images of Sophia. He shook his head and muttered to himself, "You're a CEO, not a poet. Focus." But when he heard the sound of Sophia still tidying up in the kitchen, long past working hours, he knew he couldn't keep pretending to be busy. He walked down to the kitchen, trying to maintain his usual cold expression, though his voice came out softer than he intended. "Miss Miller, it's pouring outside. Why haven't you left yet?" Sophia looked up from wiping the granite counter. Her blonde hair was slightly damp, a few strands clinging to her cheeks from having dashed in from the garage. She smiled and tucked a loose piece behind her ear, a habit Marcus had secretly counted countless times. "I finished mowing the lawn late today, and I wanted to clean the kitchen properly, sir. It deserves to be spotless, doesn't it?" Marcus chuckled, a rare sound in this house. "You talk like the kitchen has feelings." He hesitated, then gestured toward the kettle on the stove. "I made some ginger tea. Would you like a cup? It's cold out." Sophia blinked, surprised, but nodded. "Thank you, sir. Ginger tea sounds lovely." They sat across from each other at the large kitchen island, each holding a cup of hot tea. Steam curled gently between them, like a soft veil. The silence was peaceful, filled only by the rhythmic tapping of rain and the faint clink of porcelain. Marcus, used to high-stakes meetings and lavish galas, suddenly felt that this kitchen with its warm lights and faint ginger scent was the coziest place he'd ever been. Sophia was the first to break the silence. "Have you ever thought about what you'd do if you weren't a CEO?" Her tone was gentle, like she was chatting with a friend. Marcus frowned, unused to such questions. "Never," he replied, taking a sip of tea. "I was raised to lead, to win. But you're always smiling, even when your job isn't easy. How do you do that?" Sophia stared into her cup, her smile fading slightly, like his question had touched something tender. "I grew up in an orphanage, you know," she began softly. "No parents, no family. On the worst days, all I wanted was to hide in a corner and cry. Then I met Miss Ellen, a volunteer. She taught me that smiling doesn't mean everything's perfect. It helps you find a reason to keep going. The kids at Esperanza, they're my reason." Marcus listened, gripping his cup a little tighter. He'd never thought about Sophia's past, about what she must have gone through to become the woman sitting across from him, the one who could still smile so brightly despite wearing shoes that looked ready to fall apart. "You want to go into social work, don't you?" he asked, remembering the notes tucked into her worn-out books. "Why? You could find an easier job, something that pays better." Sophia smiled faintly, her eyes glowing. "Easy doesn't make me happy. I want to help kids like I used to be the ones who think they don't deserve to be loved. If I can make just one child believe they matter, that's enough." She paused, then looked at Marcus. "What about you? What makes you happy?" The question landed like a soft punch. Marcus opened his mouth, but no answer came. He'd built an empire, bought expensive cars, owned this mansion, but happiness. He wasn't sure he'd recognize it if it stood right in front of him. "You're always smiling," he said, his voice lowering unexpectedly. He didn't know why he said it, only that it slipped out before he could stop it. "Why didn't anyone teach me how to do that?" he added quickly, trying to cover the awkwardness. Sophia's eyes widened, her cheeks tinged pink. Then she laughed, a sound clear and light as wind chimes. "No one needs to teach you, Mr. Wellington. You just need to find your reason." She sipped her tea, then teased. "Like leaving coffee for the best mirror cleaner, for instance?" Marcus flushed, nearly choking on his tea. You saw that? He mumbled, pretending to look out the window to hide his embarrassment. They kept talking, forgetting the lines between a CEO and a maid. Sophia shared how one of the kids at the orphanage insisted on calling her Queen of Teddy Bears because she always brought toys. Marcus, for the first time, opened up about sneaking cookies at midnight as a kid, only to get caught and grounded for a week. They laughed together, the sound echoing through the kitchen, banishing the chill from the rainy night. In that moment, they weren't Marcus Wellington, the guarded billionaire, or Sophia Miller, the housemaid. They were just Marcus and Sophia, two people finding connection in the most unexpected place. As Marcus passed her another cup of tea, his hand brushed hers. They both froze, eyes locking. A warmth spread from her fingertips into him, and instead of pulling away, Marcus let the moment linger just a few seconds longer, as if afraid that letting go would shatter everything. Sophia didn't move either, her cheeks flushing before she broke the tension with a playful grin. "Careful, sir. Tea's hot." Marcus laughed, shaking his head. "You're a menace, Miller." The rain had slowed, but they remained, talking until the clock crept toward midnight. When Sophia finally stood to leave, Marcus felt a small emptiness in his chest. "Thanks for the tea," she said, her smile brighter than the kitchen lights. "And for listening." "Thank you for sharing," Marcus replied, his voice slightly hoarse. He watched her walk away, a small figure beneath a worn umbrella, and told himself to keep his distance. But deep down, he knew he'd already lost not to a maid, but to a heart that made him want to learn how to smile even just once. Still following the story? If this story found you outside of Soul Stories, we invite you home to where every touching tale begins with truth, hope, and heart. Marcus Wellington stood in his third-floor office, staring out the window at the hazy glow of streetlights through a light drizzle. His mind had been a storm ever since that evening in the kitchen, since the ginger tea, since Sophia Miller's smile had made him feel like a human being again, not just a machine running a tech empire. He knew he had to do something, not just to keep her close, but to show her he understood her dreams. But Marcus, master of billion-dollar deals, felt like a fumbling schoolboy when it came to his own feelings. The next morning, he called Sophia into the sunlit sitting room. The light poured through the tall windows, casting a golden glow across her bright blonde hair. Sophia entered in her usual simple blue t-shirt and worn-out sneakers, a cleaning cloth still in hand like she might get back to work any second. "Do you need me to clean something, Mr. Wellington?" she asked, her eyes playful. Marcus cleared his throat, trying to maintain the serious demeanor of a CEO, even though his heart was thudding like a drum. "No, Miller, this isn't about cleaning. I have an offer." He paused, nervously running a hand through his hair, a rare gesture he only made when rattled. "I want you to manage the estate, 6-figure salary, full health benefits, paid vacation, and unlimited cream-filled pastries. You like ice cream, don't you?" He added the last part with a sheepish smile, hoping she'd remember the Haagen-Dazs incident. Sophia blinked, slowly lowering the cleaning cloth, as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. She stood still for a few moments, lips parted, then her expression softened, touched with something that looked a bit like sorrow. Marcus, used to quick nods and eager handshakes from employees, felt a strange chill crawl up his spine. "Mr. Wellington," she said slowly, "I'm truly grateful, really. But my dream is to change the world, to help kids like I used to be. Not clean houses, even with the most advanced AI mop on Earth." The room fell quiet, the ticking of the wall clock suddenly louder than before. Marcus opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. He'd prepared for every kind of reaction, a nod, a negotiation, even a polite no, but not this kind of quiet, unwavering resolve. He let out a dry laugh and collapsed onto the sofa. "This is a first," he said, sighing. "Someone turning down a 6-figure offer without cursing at me. You really are something else, Miller." Sophia smiled, but her gaze was warm, like she understood what he was trying to do. "I don't want you to think I'm ungrateful," she said, stepping closer. "You've been incredibly kind with the coffee, with everything, but I have to do what I believe is right." She paused and tucked her hair behind her ear, the very habit that always made Marcus want to smile, even when his heart was twisting. He stood up, almost instinctively moving toward her. And before he could stop himself, he reached for her hand. It was small, warm, calloused from long hours of work. Marcus meant to say something, maybe to convince her. Maybe just to tell her he didn't want her to disappear. But the words caught in his throat. All he could do was gently squeeze her hand, his eyes filled with something unspoken, and then let go, afraid that holding on too long would give away everything he was trying to hide. "I understand," he said, his voice hoarse. "But if you change your mind, the offer stands, and so do the pastries." Sophia laughed, a sound like wind chimes, scattering the tension. "You really know how to negotiate, Mr. Wellington. I'll remember the pastry part." She picked up her cloth and returned to work, but her smile lingered in Marcus's mind like a ray of sunshine. That entire day, Marcus couldn't focus. He sat in his office, staring blankly at his computer screen, reading nothing. Sophia's refusal didn't frustrate him. It made him admire her even more. She wasn't just the girl who cleaned mirrors or sneaked spoonfuls of ice cream. She was someone who lived for her dream, something Marcus, with all his wealth and power, had never dared to do. But alongside the admiration came a quiet, unfamiliar fear that one day she might leave his world entirely, taking that smile with her. Meanwhile, Sophia wiped down the kitchen counters with a heart full of contradictions. She knew Marcus wasn't just some rich boss with odd ideas like unlimited pastries. Through his eyes, through that brief but meaningful touch, she sensed a sincerity she hadn't encountered in anyone else. "Don't be ridiculous, Sophia," she told herself. "He's a billionaire. You're just the maid." And yet, when their hands had touched, her heartbeat had quickened, and she couldn't deny it. Marcus Wellington was slowly becoming a part of her dreams. Marcus Wellington's villa, once filled with clumsy teasing, and Sophia Miller's cheerful laughter, had grown unbearably quiet. Just days ago, they'd sat in the kitchen sharing stories under warm yellow light, their hands brushing over ginger tea. Now an invisible wall had risen between them, built from unspoken words and misunderstandings neither dared to address. It all began one afternoon. Sophia was wiping down the dining table when she suddenly paused, her gaze drifting somewhere far away. Marcus, walking in with the intention of accidentally asking her about something he hadn't even made up yet, noticed the distant look in her eyes. "You all right, Miller?" he asked, his voice gentler than usual. Sophia smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I was just thinking about someone," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think I have a crush on someone, but he's out of reach, too far." Marcus felt his heart twist painfully. He tried to keep a neutral expression, but his hand clenched the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Oh," he replied hoarsely, "he must be someone special." He wanted to ask who. He wanted to know who this man was, but his throat dried up, and an invisible fear stopped him cold. Sophia nodded, her eyes heavy with quiet sorrow. "He is, but maybe he's not meant for me." No more words were exchanged. Marcus mumbled something about a meeting and left, his footsteps heavy with the weight of what he hadn't said. His mind raced with questions. Who was he? A volunteer from the orphanage? Someone she met at the store? He told himself she had every right to like whomever she wanted, but that only made the ache in his chest sharper. Marcus Tech Billionaire, a man who never lost a deal, now felt like he was losing to a faceless man he didn't even know. From then on, Marcus began to avoid her. He had lunch in his office, kept his door shut, pretended to be buried in emails and financial charts. The accidental run-ins in the kitchen, living room, or hallway gone. He told himself it was the right thing to do. "She has someone else," he muttered, staring at a spreadsheet he couldn't read. "You're just her boss, Marcus. Don't make a fool of yourself." Sophia, sensing the distance, grew quieter too. She cleaned like a ghost, silent, efficient, almost invisible. The whir of the vacuum replaced their jokes and banter. She noticed how Marcus no longer came by. Her heart ached. "Did I say something wrong?" she wondered, polishing a mirror with slow, uncertain hands. She thought about his eyes when she mentioned the man she couldn't reach, how hurt he'd looked. She wanted to explain that the man she spoke of was him, but how could she? He was Marcus Wellington, owner of an empire. and she was just a maid in worn-out shoes with dreams too big for her hands. One afternoon, Marcus sat in his office, the window open to let in the golden light. He tried to read a financial report, but his gaze kept drifting outside to Sophia, wiping the glass on the porch. She wore her usual blue tee, hair tied high, but her movements were slower, as if her thoughts were elsewhere. Marcus narrowed his eyes, then froze when he noticed her eyes red and glistening in the sunlight, as if she'd been crying. He gripped the edge of his chair, nails digging into his palms. He wanted to run to her, ask what was wrong, hold her and say he couldn't take this silence anymore. But he stayed still, as if his feet were nailed to the floor. She has someone else, he reminded himself. Don't make things harder for her, Marcus. Outside, Sophia had no idea Marcus was watching. She kept cleaning the glass, but the tears wouldn't stop, forcing her to pause and pretend to adjust her cloth. She told herself he was just being kind, that someone like him could never fall for someone like her. But why did it hurt so much when he avoided her? When he no longer popped in with silly questions about wood floors or chandeliers? The villa became heavy with tension, as if the walls themselves could feel their sadness. Marcus ate alone, barely touching his cold sandwich. Sophia cleaned with robotic precision, but the sparkle in her eyes, the one that once disarmed Marcus, was gone. They were in love, and neither of them dared to say it. They thought about each other, dreamed of each other, but they remained trapped by fear and silence. That night, Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling, whispering, "She's happy with someone else. You have to let her go, Marcus." But the thought only made his chest ache, like something inside him was tearing apart. Sophia, in her small room, curled up with her copy of The Velveteen Rabbit, whispered, "I fell in love with someone I can't reach." She cried softly, alone, only the sound of rain outside her window keeping her company. The silence between them only deepened their love, and the deeper it grew, the more it hurt. The villa of Marcus Wellington, once filled with awkward but warm moments between him and Sophia Miller, now carried a weary stillness, as if the house itself was mourning. After days of distance, Marcus avoiding her and Sophia cleaning in silence, a piece of news hit him like a bolt of lightning. Sophia had been accepted into a master's program in social work with a full scholarship, and she was resigning. Marcus received Sophia's resignation email on a quiet Tuesday morning while pretending to read a financial report in his office. Her wording was brief and polite, but each sentence felt like a blade. "Thank you, Mr. Wellington, for the opportunity to work here. I will be leaving in 2 weeks to begin graduate school. I truly appreciate your support." He read it over and over, his grip tightening on the computer mouse as he whispered, "She's really going. She's actually leaving." He wanted to be angry, wanted to blame her for leaving his heart in disarray, but deep down, he knew this was her dream, the dream he once admired, the dream he once wanted to protect. Meanwhile, Sophia stood in the kitchen, wiping down the granite counter for what felt like the last time, a heaviness in her chest. She had prepared herself for this day, but each glance around the house where she had once laughed with Marcus, once accepted a cup of coffee with a scribbled note, felt like leaving a piece of herself behind. "This is my chance. Don't get weak now, Sophia. He's just your boss," she reminded herself. But thoughts of Marcus, of the sadness in his eyes when she mentioned someone out of reach, kept returning, making her wonder if she was walking away from something more important than a scholarship. Marcus decided to do one final thing for Sophia. He sat down and wrote her a recommendation letter for her graduate program, each word chosen carefully but filled with quiet emotion. "Miss Sophia Miller has a heart bigger than this entire house, and I know because she has scrubbed every corner of it with unmatched dedication. She doesn't just work, she lives for others, especially the children at Esperanza Orphanage. Any institution lucky enough to have her will be better for it." He finished typing, reread it, then let out a bitter laugh. "Scrubbed every corner. That sounds like a disguised love confession, Marcus." He scolded himself, but didn't change it. He wanted her to know, if only through words, just how much she meant to him. He did one more thing. He transferred enough funds to keep Esperanza Orphanage running for another year. With it, he included a handwritten note. "For the kids, not a bribe." He placed it in an envelope and left it on the kitchen counter on Sophia's last day, knowing she'd find it there. He couldn't hand it to her himself. He was afraid of her eyes, afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold back the words he'd kept hidden for so long. The day Sophia left, she found the envelope on the kitchen counter. She opened it, read the note, and her hands trembled when she saw the amount and understood what it meant. Tears spilled down her cheeks, falling onto the granite counter she had wiped down 100 times, not from sadness, but from gratitude. In that moment, she realized Marcus was a kind man, a man who had stirred her heart. But she also knew the distance between them. A billionaire and a maid seemed too wide, too impossible to cross. Sophia didn't know that Marcus was standing behind the kitchen door, watching her through a small crack. He saw her clutch the envelope. He saw her cry, and it felt like his chest was being torn in half. He pressed his fingers to the doorframe, gripping the wood as if to anchor himself, wanting to run in, to tell her not to go, to say that he loved her. But he stood there unmoving, letting the pain swallow him. She loves someone else, and she's living her dream, he whispered, his voice rough. You don't get to keep her, Marcus. Before leaving, Sophia left a small gift on the counter, a box of ginger tea, the kind they had shared that rainy night. She didn't write a note, but the tea said everything. A thank you, a goodbye, and maybe a quiet regret. She picked up her old canvas tote, walked out of the villa, and didn't look back, though her heart felt like it was carrying the entire house with her. Marcus found the box of tea after she left. He picked it up, ran his fingers across the lid, and collapsed onto a chair, staring out the window where her figure had vanished. She's gone, he murmured, his voice fading. He opened the box, inhaled the familiar scent of ginger, and a smile tugged at his lips, even as his eyes burned. You were good at cleaning mirrors, Miller, but you forgot to clean my heart. The villa was quieter than ever now, filled only with the ticking of the clock and the soft scent of ginger tea. Marcus knew he had to let Sophia go, but every corner of the house held her presence, from the gleaming counters to the dreams she once shared. And Sophia, stepping into a new chapter of her life, couldn't stop thinking about the man who had quietly become her guardian angel, the man she loved but never dared to hope would be hers. The villa of Marcus Wellington, still spotless thanks to Sophia Miller's diligent hands in her final days there, now carried a heavy tension in the air. After writing her a heartfelt recommendation letter and leaving her a goodbye gift, Marcus had tried to accept that Sophia was about to leave his life. But fate, with its cruel sense of humor, had other plans. Just days after Sophia officially left her job, Marcus received an email from David, his longtime assistant since their college days. The subject line read, "Urgent, major security issue." Marcus frowned and opened the message. As he read, blood rushed to his head. It was a report accusing Sophia of unauthorized access to Neurotech's internal data allegedly sent to a third party. According to David, the report had already been forwarded to the admissions committee of Sophia's graduate program, threatening her full scholarship. Marcus clenched his fists so tightly his nails dug into his palms. She didn't do this, he growled, his voice shaking with fury. No way in hell. Without hesitation, he summoned David to his office. David entered with his usual calm demeanor, but his eyes darted nervously. Marcus didn't waste time. You filed the report against Sophia. Why? His voice was icy, like a seasoned negotiator cornering a rival. David shrugged, trying to appear composed. Sir, I was just protecting the company. There's evidence she accessed the system after hours. Marcus slammed his hand down on the desk, causing his coffee mug to tremble. Evidence? Do you think I'm stupid? I checked the access logs myself. There were no unauthorized logins from her account. You forged that report. Tell me the truth, or I swear you'll never work in tech again. David went pale. After a moment, he bowed his head. I liked her, he admitted, voice shrinking. I confessed a few weeks ago, but she turned me down. Said she had someone else in her heart. I thought if she lost her scholarship, maybe she'd stay, and he trailed off, realizing just how far he had gone. Marcus stood abruptly, eyes blazing. You sabotaged her because she didn't return your feelings? He stepped closer, his voice low but dangerously sharp. You'll retract the report immediately. Send a formal apology to her graduate program and make damn sure her scholarship remains untouched. If I find out you so much as breathe near her again, David, you'll regret ever working for me." David nodded rapidly, practically fleeing the room with the look of a man who'd stared into the abyss. But Marcus's anger hadn't passed. Trying to calm himself, he aimlessly scrolled through social media until one photo made his breath catch. Sophia, smiling brightly, standing beside a young man, Mateo, an intern at Esperanza Orphanage. His arm was casually draped over her shoulder, and they looked like they were sharing a joyful moment. Marcus's chest tightened. "So, it's him," he muttered, imagining Mateo as the someone she couldn't reach, she once mentioned. Jealousy, a foreign feeling to a man who always controlled everything, burned through him like fire. Without thinking, Marcus drove straight to Esperanza, telling himself he was just checking the plumbing after his recent donation. But the moment he arrived, he saw Sophia and Mateo laughing with the kids. One little girl had drawn a mustache on Mateo's face with a marker, and Sophia was laughing so hard her eyes crinkled. That laugh, so radiant, stabbed Marcus like a dagger. He walked up trying to appear composed, but his voice came out sharp and biting. "You're good at laughing, kid. Should I sponsor you for a stand-up comedy course?" Mateo blinked, confused, but Sophia frowned. She could immediately sense something was off. She pulled Marcus aside, away from the kids. "Mr. Wellington, what's going on?" she asked, concern in her voice. Marcus stepped closer than he usually would, so close he could smell the soft scent of soap from her hair. His eyes, filled with longing and hurt, said everything but the words that came out were cold and clumsy. "He's the guy, isn't he? The one you said you couldn't reach? I was going to wait, but maybe I was just a fool, waiting for a day when no one else could make you laugh like that." Sophia froze, her eyes wide, startled by the implication behind his words. "Sir, what are you trying to say?" But Marcus had already turned away, walking briskly back to his car, leaving her standing there with her heart racing. Inside the car, Marcus gripped the steering wheel tightly. "What the hell did you just do, Marcus? That's your idea of a love confession?" He slammed a hand against the wheel, overwhelmed with regret. Sophia stood in the hallway, touching the spot where Marcus had stood so close. Her mind reeled. His words, though veiled in frustration, sounded almost like a confession. She thought about the photo with Mateo. It had been a simple, happy moment, nothing more. Was he jealous? She whispered, her cheeks flushing. But the idea that Marcus, a billionaire with the world at his feet, could be jealous over her, both thrilled and frightened her. The distance between them seemed to stretch even wider, even as their hearts had never been closer. Tension hung in the air like a taut wire ready to snap. Marcus, consumed by jealousy, had revealed a glimpse of his feelings, but in the process had thrown Sophia into confusion. They had nearly touched, but once again, misunderstanding pulled them further apart. Sophia Miller stood in the small classroom at Esperanza Orphanage, clutching a worn-out book, her mind caught in a storm. The cutting words of Marcus Wellington, "I was going to wait, but I guess I was a fool," still echoed in her chest like a blade to the heart. She thought of the photo with Mateo, of Marcus's burning, jealous gaze, and her heart raced as she realized he had misunderstood. "He thinks I have feelings for Mateo," she murmured, cheeks flushing with heat. The idea that Marcus, a powerful man who seemed to hold the entire world in his hands, might feel jealous because of her, made her tremble with both hope and fear. But she couldn't let it all sink into silence. "I have to tell him the truth," she told herself, inhaling deeply, gripping the book like a lifeline. "Even if he laughs at me, even if he sends me away, I have to give my heart a chance." At that very moment, Marcus was speeding toward Esperanza, his grip on the steering wheel white-knuckled. After the chaos with David and the jealous outburst he couldn't control, he couldn't stand the thought of letting Sophia go without knowing the truth. He had spent the night sleepless, haunted by her smile, her laughter with the children, and the ginger tea box she left behind a wound he couldn't ignore. "You're not a coward, Marcus," he muttered as he pulled up to the orphanage, bathed in the golden glow of sunset. "She deserves to know, even if she loves someone else." Inside, Sophia was placing books back on the shelf when she heard hurried footsteps. She turned and saw Marcus standing in the doorway, wearing a wrinkled gray coat, hair tousled like he'd run through a storm. His eyes weren't cold like usual. They burned wild and desperate, as if he feared she might vanish if he came a second too late. "Mr. Wellington?" she whispered, the book slipping from her fingers to the floor. Are, are you okay?" Marcus stepped inside and shut the door behind him with a final echoing click. He took a deep breath like a man stepping off a cliff. "Sophia," he said, voice rough, calling her by her first name for the first time. "I'm not good at this. I'm awkward. I'm blunt. But I can't let you go without saying it. I followed you. That day you came to Esperanza. And damn it, Sophia, I love you." The last words came out like a roar, filled with pain and longing, as if he'd held them in too long and they'd torn through his chest to escape. Sophia stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened, but no words came. At first, anger sparked. How dare he admit to following her? But then the tears came. Not from sadness, but from the emotional storm swelling inside her: confusion, frustration, and a ridiculous joy at hearing those three words. "I love you." Marcus shook his head and stepped closer, so close she could smell the cedar in his cologne. "I'm paranoid. I'm clumsy. I know you have someone else, but I needed to say it. I love you. I don't know how to be close to you without messing everything up. You're not just an employee, you're everything to me. I loved you from the moment you stole that damn ice cream, from the moment you had the kids scream no pickles, from the moment you turned me down to chase your dreams. I love you, and it's killing me to think you might love someone else." Sophia took a trembling breath, tears streaming down her cheeks, but her heart cracked open like sunlight breaking through clouds. She stepped forward, only a breath away, and gathered her courage. "Marcus, you idiot!" Her voice shook, but it held firm. "The man I love, the one I thought I could never reach, isn't Mateo. It's not anyone else. It's you. I've loved you. I just thought I was a foolish maid with dreams too big. But I can't let you keep believing a lie. I love you, Marcus Wellington. I love the way you clumsily left me coffee. I love the way you pretended to check the wood floor just to talk to me." Time seemed to stop. The golden classroom lights wrapped around them like a quiet spell. Marcus stared at her, eyes wide in disbelief. "You love me?" he repeated, his voice cracking like it had never said anything more precious. Sophia nodded, tears still falling, but her smile was radiant, brighter than the sunset outside. Marcus didn't wait another second. He surged forward, pulling her into his arms, strong, desperate, as if she was the only thing anchoring him to this world. She wrapped her arms around him, holding tight, and in that moment, they were no longer billionaire and maid, no longer filled with doubts or guarded by fear. His lips found hers in a kiss that was fierce and hungry, burning with every moment they'd been apart. Every word left unsaid. The kiss was messy and aching, but sweet too, like they were speaking a language made of silence, and finally understood each other. He whispered against her lips, "I'm not letting you go again, Sophia." She smiled and kissed him again, deeper this time, like a promise. They stood there, wrapped in each other, under the golden light of the classroom. Their breath mingled, their hearts beat in sync. For the first time, they saw each other clearly, without fear, without doubt, just love, raw, blazing, and unbreakable. Marcus brushed her hair from her face, eyes soft with wonder. Sophia leaned into his chest, knowing that whatever the world brought, they had found each other. And that was enough. You're watching Soul Stories exclusive to our channel. If you're still with us, drop a comment we read and cherish them all. Subscribe to support more heartfelt original stories. Thanks for being part of the Soul Stories family. The villa of Marcus Wellington, once a place filled with misunderstandings and distance, now glowed with a different kind of light. Not the cold gleam of LED fixtures, but the warmth of shared, simple moments between him and Sophia Miller. After their impassioned confession under the golden light of Esperanza Orphanage, they decided to give love a real chance, choosing to date as equals, not as a billionaire and a former maid, but as two people ready to start anew. But their love didn't stop at romantic dinners or quiet nights together. It became something deeper, richer, built on a shared mission, bringing hope to those who needed it most. Together, Marcus and Sophia founded the Morales Wellington Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting orphans and providing community education. They poured themselves into the work organizing English classes, awarding scholarships to children at Esperanza and beyond. Marcus, once a master of billion-dollar deals, now found joy in negotiating bulk discounts for textbooks. Sophia, with her ever-compassionate heart, became the soul of the foundation, designing creative education programs and laughing with the kids like a beloved big sister. They were building a future not just for themselves, but for children who once believed they had none. One afternoon, Sophia walked into the foundation's temporary office, which Marcus had set up in one of the villa's living rooms. She carried a box of homemade cookies, hoping to surprise him, but he wasn't there. On the desk lay a messy pile of papers, foundation forms, contracts, and a few of Marcus's handwritten notes. Smiling and shaking her head at his chaos, she began tidying up. As she opened an old folder, a single sheet slipped out, a transaction receipt for a $50,000 wire transfer, marked anonymous, with Esperanza Orphanage listed as the recipient, and Marcus's signature at the bottom. Sophia froze. Her hands trembled as she read. She remembered the day Esperanza was saved. She remembered crying, believing a guardian angel had appeared. But it had been Marcus all along, the man she loved, who had never once mentioned it. She clutched the paper to her chest, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by gratitude, admiration, and a hint of frustration. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered, heart bursting with love. When Marcus returned, carrying 2 cups of coffee, he saw her sitting in the chair, eyes red, the receipt still in her hand. "Sophia?" he asked gently, setting the coffee down. "Are you okay? What's going on?" She stood, crossed the room, and wrapped her arms around him, eyes both angry and full of affection. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, holding up the receipt. "You were the one who saved Esperanza, Marcus. You gave those kids a second chance, and you never said a word. Why?" Marcus froze, looking like a schoolboy caught sneaking cookies. He scratched his head, a sheepish smile tugging at his lips. "I didn't think it mattered," he said softly. "I just wanted to help you, help the kids. I didn't want you to think I was showing off or keeping score. I just wanted to see you smile." She pressed herself against him, whispering, "You have no idea how much it meant. You didn't just save the orphanage, you saved my dream. And you did it without needing anyone to know. I love you even more for that." Caught off guard by the intensity of her embrace, Marcus wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly. Her warmth was like a balm to every wound he'd hidden for years. "I love you, Sophia," he whispered, kissing the top of her head. "And I'll do anything to keep you smiling." They stood together in the middle of that paper-strewn room, laughing through tears. Their love had matured, no longer just passion, but deep respect, understanding, and a shared purpose to make the world better. Marcus learned to open up, to share the things he once kept buried. And Sophia learned to believe she was worthy of his love, no matter his status or fortune, even if he was still hopeless at organizing paperwork. Late one evening, as they prepared for an upcoming fundraiser, Sophia fell asleep at the desk, head resting on a pile of documents about new education initiatives. Marcus walked in to find her slumped over, her golden hair spilling across the table, covering one cheek. He smiled, his heart full at the sight of the woman who had changed his life. Quietly, he sat beside her, not wanting to wake her. He brushed a gentle kiss across her forehead, a kiss full of tenderness and devotion. Sophia stirred slightly, her lips curling into a sleepy smile, but she didn't wake. "Sleep well, my girl," Marcus whispered, tucking his coat over her shoulders. Then he turned to the stack of work, never once taking his eyes off her. In the days that followed, they kept building the foundation, facing new challenges together. From charming sponsors to managing the chaos of hyperactive kids at Esperanza, they did it all hand in hand. They found joy in the smallest things. Morning coffee, shared glances, playful arguments over who was worse at filing. The Morales Wellington Foundation became more than a mission. It was a symbol of their love, a love that had grown stronger through hardship, that was rooted in purpose and blooming in kindness. And through every page turned, every child helped, every evening shared on the villa steps, they were rewriting their own story, not one of class or power, but of 2 people who had chosen to begin again, together. Esperanza Orphanage, once the starting point of a love story tangled in mistrust and misunderstanding between Marcus Wellington and Sophia Miller, now shimmered under warm golden lights. White ribbons floated between the trees. Wooden tables were adorned with wildflowers picked from the backyard by the children, and laughter rang out in every corner. Today wasn't just a wedding, it was the day Marcus and Sophia, after all the storms, officially became one, in front of the people they loved most. The backyard had been transformed into a modest yet heartwarming ceremony space. The children of Esperanza, dressed in their very best, even if a few shirts were a little wrinkled, ran about hugging teddy bears Sophia had once given them. Volunteers, now their closest friends, hurried to set up chairs and test the sound system. Beneath the setting sun, the twinkling golden string lights made it seem as though Esperanza itself was smiling at their love. Sophia stepped out, wearing a simple white dress, her blonde hair flowing loose with a few tiny flowers tucked in. She didn't need a lavish gown or sparkling jewels. Her radiant smile and shining eyes were the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever seen. He stood at the end of the aisle, wearing a tailored gray suit, but looking nervous, like a teenager on his first date. As Sophia walked toward him, holding a bouquet of wildflowers the kids had picked, Marcus felt his throat go dry. "Damn, she's beautiful," he muttered, making little Tommy, the boy who once yelled "No pickles," giggle from the front row. The ceremony was led by Miss Ellen, the volunteer who had once inspired Sophia to dream bigger. When it came time for their vows, Marcus took a deep breath, held Sophia's hands, and began. His voice was rough but full of emotion. "Sophia, you didn't just clean my house. You swept the dust off my soul. I used to think I didn't need anyone, didn't trust anyone. But you taught me how to love, how to live for someone else. I promise to spend the rest of my life making you laugh, even if I'm terrible at it." He paused, eyes red, as the kids chorused a heartfelt "ah," sending the whole crowd into laughter. Tears sparkling, Sophia pulled a small note from her pocket, one Marcus had once hidden inside a box of ginger tea. She'd found it while packing up his things. Her voice trembled as she read, "Miss Miller has a heart bigger than this entire house, and I have proof because she's cleaned every corner of it." She looked up at him, smiling through tears. "You wrote that before either of us knew what this was. Marcus, you're the reason I believe in the impossible. I promise to stand by you." The crowd erupted in laughter and Marcus blushed, pretending to glare at her, but unable to hide his grin. They exchanged rings, simple silver bands engraved with the word Esperanza, a tribute to the place where their love began. When Miss Ellen declared them husband and wife, the kids erupted into cheers, tossing paper flowers in the air. Marcus pulled Sophia into a tight embrace and whispered, "You're finally mine." She smiled and kissed his cheek, triggering another round of applause. The reception was filled with laughter and unforgettable moments. The children dragged Sophia onto the dance floor, spinning her until she was dizzy. Marcus, never much of a dancer, was pulled in by Tommy and the others, resulting in a wild, chaotic performance that looked more like he was swatting invisible bugs than dancing. But the most beautiful moment came when a slow song began, a soft ballad drifting through the night. Marcus reached out, took Sophia's hand, and led her to the center. They began a clumsy, slow dance, with Marcus constantly stepping on her dress. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his face red. Sophia laughed, resting her head against his chest. "I love you clumsy like this," she murmured. As they swayed under the golden lights, Marcus bent down and whispered in her ear, "I still want to learn how to smile like you, Sophia." She squeezed his hand, looking up with eyes full of light. "You already have, Marcus. Just look at yourself now." They laughed, and their kiss, soft and full of love, drew a unified "ew" from the kids, while the volunteers clapped and cheered. The wedding ended in applause from friends, family, and the true family they had built, Esperanza's children, the volunteers, and Miss Ellen, who wiped away tears as she watched Sophia shine. The golden lights above glowed like a blessing from the universe, a quiet promise that their love, once forged in silence and misread signals, had become the most beautiful thing in both their lives. Marcus and Sophia, hand in hand, knew this wasn't an ending, but the beginning of a new chapter. One they would write together, filled with fulfilled dreams, shared laughter, and hearts forever open.